In the last stream, we were working on ever so slightly increasing the amount of EMC that we are passively generating per second, and right at the end of the last episode, we got this final power flower Mark 16. Currently, we have 4 of these down, along with the ability to activate 5 of these watches of flowing time here, each of which massively accelerate the speed of these final power flowers to the point where with all of them active, we can produce almost 50 quadrillion EMC per second, which is just a staggering amount of EMC, almost an unfathomable amount of EMC. We're at 26.4 quintillion EMC already. And I think that's way more EMC than we're going to need for the remainder of the pack. I don't think anything in this pack is that expensive. And so now we can get started on the next questline here, the semi-final questline, the technological revolution. This jumps us in with mechanism, and thankfully I don't think this is going to be particularly difficult for us due to the fact that almost everything from mechanism here does have an EMC value. The first machine that it wants us to make is the metallurgic infuser. This thing, super easy, does require that ever important osmium that we worked so hard to get in a previous episode, but now does have an EMC value. And so much like everything else, we do have approximately 2 billion of it available to us in the system. And I think given how constrained we are for space up here, I might end up putting these down on a lower platform. Although I think, to be fair, I can probably line the mechanism machines up like this on top of the flux points, kind of offset one bank from our thermal machines. In here, we can now make quite a few different things. We can make some circuits and we can make some alloys. The alloys that we're going to need are the infused alloy, the reinforced alloy, and the atomic alloy. And then the circuits that we're going to need are the basic circuit, the advanced circuit, the elite circuit, and the ultimate circuit. Everything there has an EMC value, and so if we make just one of each of those items, we will then have an infinite amount available to us thanks to the 192 trillion EMC that we're generating per second. And so initially, we need redstone, which apparently we've not taught to our system. Let me check that again. It says we got 5, but it does let me take out way more than 5, so I think that's just a visual glitch. We're then going to need 1 iron ingot. Again, I think the interface is kind of bugging out a little bit just because there's so much stuff now. I'm fairly certain that yes, we do have iron ingots available. It might just be the case that we have to search in the transmutation tablet, not in our simple storage network to find specific things like that. But in here, if we throw in 1 bit of redstone and 1 iron ingot, that is going to get us 1 infused alloy. We can do the exact same thing with 1 osmium ingot here, and that's going to get us our first basic control circuit. Again, 1 redstone and 1 osmium. It might actually be 2 redstone and 1 osmium. It is indeed. To upgrade from the infused alloys to the reinforced alloy, we need diamond. Unfortunately, the diamond cannot go in on its own. It can't go in just as a diamond like the redstone can. That has to go in as an infused diamond, which we see here, an enriched diamond. That enriched diamond requires the enrichment chamber, which thankfully there's a quest for. And now that we have the basic control circuit here, we can of course teach that along with the infused alloy to our transmutation tablet. And now we should almost have everything for the enrichment chamber. In fact, we do, because the steel casing also had an EMC that we made previously as well. We should be teaching these as we go, again, just in case we do need more of them. But now, if I put that down, I think, just be able to throw a diamond in there, not a mana diamond, just a regular old diamond. That should infuse into an enriched diamond. We can make that just a little bit faster. And then if we put that in there, just again, as soon as we do one of these, we can now put that in, and we can then use our infused alloy to make reinforced alloy. And with that, we can also begin to make some of the higher tier circuits as well. We already have the basic circuit. The advanced circuit is just the basic circuit with 2 infused alloy, easy enough. And then the elite circuit is just the advanced circuit with 2 reinforced alloy. So we'll take that and we'll do the exact same again. Perfect. And then finally, we just have the atomic alloy and the ultimate control circuit. Neither of these should be too difficult either. In the metallurgic infuser, we can turn a reinforced alloy into an atomic alloy using refined obsidian. Refined obsidian here we can get by infusing obsidian with diamond. And obsidian dust, I believe, we can actually get by just enriching obsidian. If we run it through the enrichment chamber, I'm fairly certain that's going to get us, whoops, if you don't pick it up by accident, I'm fairly certain that's going to get us some obsidian dust. It does indeed. We can, of course, go ahead, quickly teach that. And then from there, we can throw it back into here with some of our leftover diamond. And that should be everything for the refined obsidian, which I'm really hoping has an EMC value. It does indeed. Fantastic. Let's do one of these. You can also then go ahead and enrich this if you want to. If you're playing without a staggering amount of EMC, it is worthwhile to enrich it, but if you are playing with a staggering amount of EMC, there's really not much point in enriching it. All we have to do is grab one of our alloys from here, whack that in here, and that's it. We have an atomic alloy, and now we can make an infinite number of them, and then we have the atomic control circuit, and again, we can make an infinite number of them. And so that's kind of all of the base building blocks of Mechanism taken care of. The next quest we need to work towards here is the pressurized reaction chamber. To get there, we need to make a combiner first. The combiner is fairly straightforward, does require some of the stuff we've just made, reinforced alloys and elite control circuits. Easy enough, we'll teach that over in here. And now we can use that, I assume in some way, to make the pressurized reaction chamber. This is the next device that we need. The pressurized reaction chamber requires steel, 2 basic chemical tanks, an infused alloy, a basic control circuit. It requires an enrichment chamber, then a dynamic tank. I'm not quite sure why we needed a combiner. Like, I'm not quite sure why this is after this quest, but either way, I was going to pick this up, but we have already taught our system how to make enrichment chambers, so I feel like we might as well just take the one that we have. And do we have everything else for the PRC? We do not. We're missing a dynamic tank, which this is where we need the combiner. I'll bookmark that for a second. We also need 2 basic chemical tanks. These are super easy, just osmium and redstone. And again, we'll throw those in. Those do have an EMC value. Here, we can throw down our combiner like this, and we need to get 1 fluid tank from Create with 1 steel ingot. That is completely fine. Again, we do have some kind of steel, but the system's been a bit funky over there. That's fine. We'll throw you in here. And then tanks we already do have. I could go take one from downstairs, although I don't think that they're that hard to make, to the point where I'm fairly certain that we should be able to make one. I say that, and the simple storage network does not like shift-clicking in planks that are not like oak planks. It doesn't like shift clicking in these dark oak ones for whatever reason, so we'll do that manually, and then we'll get ourselves another fluid tank, which of course does have an EMC value, and from there, that should be everything for us to get our first dynamic tank. We are going to need, I believe, quite a lot of those dynamic tanks later in the episode, but for now, that should be everything for us to get our pressurized reaction chamber. Boom and boom. And this can be used to make both HDPE sheets and reprocessed fissile fragments. So I'll bookmark both of these real quick. HDPE, bookmark that, and the fissile fragments. So these are interesting because usually if you want to make fissile fuel, which is what you would normally use to run a fission reactor to make a lot of power, but to also get towards the antimatter, which is what we're working towards in this pack, usually you have to make fissile fuel the old-fashioned way, which involves using this isotopic centrifuge with uranium hexafluoride. The uranium hexafluoride is made into chemical infuser with hydrofluoric acid and uranium oxide, and there's this kind of whole chain of stuff that you have to make using a ton of different machines, and it's all a bit of a pain in the backside. However, the maker of this pack has very gracefully made it a little bit easier to get a decent amount of fissile fuel because there is now a recipe for this reprocessed fissile fragment. It can be made either in a mana pool with 1 substrate making 8 reprocessed fissile fragments, or you can use the arc furnace and turn that same 1 substrate into 64 reprocessed fissile fragments, and those can then be used to give you 2 buckets of fissile fuel each. And so you can get 128 buckets of fissile fuel from 1 substrate inside the arc furnace, and the substrate isn't too difficult to make, and bonus points, it's also required, I believe, to make the HDPE sheets. To make these, you need some HDPE pellets, and those, you guessed it, require substrate in the pressurized reaction chamber. So let's get this guy down. We'll throw it down right about here. And then if we're going to make substrate, this can be made in the PRC with biofuel, water, and then hydrogen. So we need both hydrogen and oxygen going forward, and we can get that using an electrolytic separator. Another machine from Mechanism here, fairly straightforward, does require this electrolytic core, which needs some pulverized gold, some osmium dust, and some iron dust. That is all going to be just fine, I think. Let me check in here. Can I get some osmium? Can I get some gold? And can I get some iron? I'm fairly certain we should be able to throw potentially all of these directly into the pulverizer. Annoyingly though, it looks like the osmium does not go in the pulverizer. However, it can be made in the crusher, which is perfect. I thought we might have to make the crusher from Mechanism. It does add its own crushing machine, much like the pulverizer, but never fear, we can do it, in fact, with immersive engineering. Back over here, we can take this, of course, throw all of these into our table, and that should be everything for the electrolytic core, and therefore also everything for the electrolytic separator. This is a pretty nifty little device that allows us to turn water back into hydrogen and oxygen. And so right now, we do not have an unlimited source of water up here. We could throw down another aqueous accumulator, much like we've done right here. But at the same time, yeah, I think so. We could put it down here and we could use a flux point. But no, I think it's going to make a lot more sense if I were to put this down over here. Let's put it down right about here for now. And then I'm going to quickly set up another unlimited water source, potentially just right in the ground here. And I'm going to pump that water up into this electrolytic separator so that we can start turning all of our water into hydrogen and oxygen, and then we can use some of that hydrogen to make substrate. The biofuel also fairly straightforward. Turns out I do need to make the crusher from Mechanism anyway. Again, not too difficult at all to make. We'll throw that down, let's say over on the end, over here. And with that, we can make biofuel using basically any organic matter that we have. I don't know what we have around. Do we have any potatoes? We do, and these do have an EMC value. So if we take them out and put them back in, we've got 2 billion. We can throw those in like so, and that's going to start to slowly but surely produce for us the biofuel here that we're going to need in order to make the substrate. And thankfully, by the looks of it, we don't need a ton of substrate either, which is good news. All right, so we've got down another aqueous accumulator with water either side. We're just going to extract from that using this pipe, and of course making sure that this here is set to extract. It's a little awkward with the gem armor here because whenever I press shift, I get pulled down very quickly with the gem armor, even if I'm holding the space bar, and so I can't really shift and right-click this without falling rapidly, which makes it kind of tricky to work with, and maybe not the best source of flight. I might have to kind of swap the gem armor out because it does make it difficult to do stuff like this, way more difficult than it needs to be. But either way, back up here for now. This is online, and you'll see we're getting both hydrogen and oxygen. And if we're going to move the hydrogen and oxygen, you can just put the machines next to each other. So we could just put the PRC down next to the electrolytic separator. And over here, you can configure the sides to auto eject if you wanted to. For us, though, what you can also do is you can use mechanism cables to move some of those fluids. Specifically, we are after these basic pressurized tubes, or even some of the advanced pressurized tubes. These are going to allow you to move gases like hydrogen and oxygen. And so if we check here, I want the left side to be output 1, which it is, that's hydrogen. We're going to output that up and into here. So now we have hydrogen. Nice. I believe this also requires water, as we saw earlier, and so we could also look at running a pipe up to this guy as well. Temporarily, let me just do this and see if that works. Can I not manually put that in? I can't. That is a little bit awkward. It's not the end of the world because we can, of course, just do something like this. And if we set the top here as an input and, oh no, we might not be able to pull automatically. That is fine because if we take our fluid tank here, we should be able to do the exact same thing we've done on the back there. We can grab ourselves a fluid pipe, one of our 2 billion fluid pipes. We can do something like this and something like this. And then, of course, if we do one of these, boom, and boom, that should work. And we should now start to produce substrate just as soon as we put our biofuel in here. Nice. Of course, we can make that just a little bit faster, and we get our substrate, which unfortunately doesn't have an EMC value. However, we can take our first substrate and just throw it directly into the arc furnace. That's going to produce for us our first batch of reprocessed fissile fragments. As for the HDPE sheet, that is going to require that we get 32 substrate because we need to get 32 HDPE pellets. It also means we're going to need another pressurized reaction chamber because this time we need to combine liquid ethylene with oxygen and substrate to make those HDPE pellets. So let me go ahead and get another PRC. We really should have saved the first one to our system, but that's fine. We can make another one very easily. Let's do that and make sure it's saved this time around so we can get as many as we like. And then let me go ahead, I guess, and move the enrichment chamber here, just so that we can go ahead and throw down the PRC right here. And that's going to allow us to do the exact same thing that we just did with hydrogen, but with oxygen, meaning that we can do this and this. That's going to take the oxygen out of the other side of the electrolytic separator and feed it into this PRC. And now we just need to get that liquid ethylene. The liquid ethylene is made in a rotary condensator. This can turn regular ethylene into liquid ethylene. The regular ethylene, thankfully, we get as a byproduct from making substrate. So over here, we are actually getting the ethylene here. We just need to turn that into liquid ethylene and get it around into this PRC. To do that, we need that aforementioned rotary condensator. Thankfully, not too difficult to make. It does require a basic fluid tank. We'll go ahead and teach you that. I'm surprised it's not already taught. And we also need an energy tablet, which is just gold, redstone, and 2 infused alloys. Boom and boom. Nice. And so now, with this, I think what we'll do, it's going to look a little awkward, but if I put it here, I'll move this combiner because there's no need for that to be there either. If we put the rotary condensator here, actually, I guess we could put it in the middle at that point. We could set the left here to output, blue, and we want to make sure auto eject is on. So I think if I do this and this, is that going to work? If we set this to input, which is red, that should hopefully receive the right stuff. It does not. Oh, that's because I think this is a gas, which means we have to go down to the gas tab and make sure that this is set to output. There we go. That's moved the ethylene over. The ethylene is now being turned into liquid ethylene. And then over here, that liquid ethylene needs to be imported. For that, we need to make sure this is set to input again on the gas tab down here at the bottom. And hopefully, if we again go to the gas tab and set that to output, auto eject on. Oh no, it's not a gas. Sorry, this is a liquid. I'm losing my mind here. This is a liquid. And this is a liquid input. Yes, because we're turning it from a gas into a liquid, hence why it's a liquid on this side of the equation. So there's our liquid ethylene. We want to eject that to the left side, auto eject on. That appears to be working here. We've got a fluid, which we want to input on this side. It's not going in though, which is surprising me. Oh, that's my bad. I think we put the rotary condensator down up against the pressurized reaction chamber, so I think it's actually facing this way, which is confusing, but it means that the back slot, which is this one here, is actually where we want to output to, and you'll see now it is moving over, so just make sure that you check and know which way you put the machine down so you know how to eject it. Either way, over here, this is now good to go, and so if we throw our substrate in, we're going to get our first HDPE pellets. We need 32 of these in total, and we're actually pretty close to getting that. Let me make this a little bit faster, although I think we might start to run into some power problems, because it looks like the power could potentially be an issue, although for the most part, it seems fine. And we only needed like 2 or 3 more of these. I think 3 more is the perfect amount. So over here, we'll throw you in. If I do this, is that... Yeah, I don't think... It's either not getting the power fast enough, or it is just limited on how fast it can go. You can make upgrades for this, but I'm fairly certain. Let me go check downstairs. I'm pretty sure, though, that the reactor has enough power to run this. Yeah, we've got enough power there, so it looks like it's just maybe a limitation on the machine itself. That's fine. It's not going to take too long to get up to the amount of HDPE that we need. We only need 32, and once we have that 32, we can, of course, run it through the arc furnace, and thankfully, the HDPE sheets do have a EMC value, which is good. We are going to need more substrate, probably, to make more of the fissile fuel, and so that's what we could probably do with just leaving the biofuel in there to keep going, and we could also, of course, put some more water into that tank. This could be automated, but I don't think that we're going to need hundreds of buckets of fissile fuel. I really don't think we're going to need that much in total, so I think that's going to be fine. And from there, the next task is actually to build the fission reactor from Mechanism, which is going to give us 2 big benefits. The first is that it's going to allow us, of course, to progress. We're going to get the polonium pellets. With the polonium pellets, we can make a supercritical phase shifter, and that supercritical phase shifter allows us to make the antimatter in the end. And then the second benefit is that we also get more power as well. That power is going to be even more than what we're currently getting with our current big reactor, which might seem like overkill, but the supercritical phase shifter requires a ridiculous amount of power to operate. Over here, though, the arc furnace is done. The HDPE sheets are ready. We'll learn those. We'll unbookmark all of those. And yeah, it says how to obtain. So you get polonium by refining reactor waste. To get huge amounts of reactor waste, you can either build a small reactor and wait 10 years or build a gigantic one, but it runs on a gigantic amount of water per second. So the only way to do that is as follows. We have to build a very large dynamic tank, connect it to the reactor using fluid pipes from pipes, and an infinity upgrade. The infinity upgrade is one we've not actually yet made. There was a quest for it back here, and usually the infinity upgrade is one that isn't makeable. It's like a creative item, but in this pack, it is makeable, and it's going to allow us to move either items, or in our case, fluids, very, very quickly. To make it, we need to take a stellarium plate with an ultimate pipe upgrade. So we've not actually made any of the pipe upgrades so far because they've been a little expensive for us, but we can make the basic. We can then upgrade the basic to the improved. We can then upgrade the improved to the advanced, and then the advanced to the ultimate, but that requires netherite, which we actually do not have so far. And then my next question is, can we actually make netherite? We can if we compress 64 platinum ingots in our pressurized reaction chamber. So we, by the looks of it, actually don't have any platinum unless it has an EMC value, which it does. Never mind, let me put these back in the system. In here, we do have what it takes to get a stack of platinum. And then the tricky part, as we've seen previously, is that we just have to get it into our pressure chamber over here, and we have to get the pressure just right. And we're actually pretty close already, which is good. Ever since we took away the vortex tube, we've not been losing anywhere near as much pressure passively, which is good. And so hopefully, any second now, once all those are in, we can ever so slightly bump the pressure here to just under 5 bar. And that should get us our first netherite, which does have an EMC value. So let's give that a try. If I do this, of course, the pressure does drop when the door opens there to let the items in, but we just need to make sure we don't blow this up. That's the only thing we need to make sure we don't do. I think I can go one more. I'm going to take the fuel out. I probably shouldn't have used such a... Oh. Did that work? It didn't work. And I think that's because we have this on. I think we learned before that we have to take this off, which I believe we can do with a wrench to get there. I should not be using such a long burn time fuel though. I want to use something maybe like sticks, something that we can very finely control. The sticks are going to burn very quickly, but that's what we want because we don't really want to go more than a hair over 4.95. As soon as we get to 4.95 bar, we want to take our sticks out so that we don't actually cross over into 5. Now oh no, that works. Good. I was a little worried that wouldn't work, but netherite ingot. Nice. Okay, cool. So now that we have that netherite ingot, we should, in theory, be able to make that ultimate pipe upgrade. And then as far as the stellarium plate, we should still have a little bit of stellarium. We made 16 in a previous episode. And to make it into a plate, we just need, by the looks of it, to run it through a multi-servo press, which is a little awkward because I don't think we have a multi-servo press. For whatever reason, the sawmill is on the list of machines here to be made, but is not really that useful. The multi-servo press is required to progress, but isn't on the list of machines to make. Thankfully, not too bad. It requires a block of iron, along with another redstone flux coil, we'll teach that, and 2 of these Constantan gears, which we can also go ahead and teach. Nice. That gets us a multi-servo press, which I am going to go ahead and put down probably in place of the sawmill, because I really don't foresee us needing that sawmill at any point in the near future. So we'll do something like this, and we'll throw in our 1 stellarium ingot. That is going to go ahead and get us the stellarium plate, which should then be everything for the infinity pipe upgrade if we combine it over in the combiner with, of course, the pipe upgrade that we just got. And once we have that, we can go back, of course, down to the quest line here. So we need a infinity item pipe. We can put the Evertide amulet in the dynamic tank input slot to give it an unlimited supply of water. Output the waste to a chemical tank, and we're good to go. So the idea here, I believe, is that the dynamic tanks here, if I press Shift and N, the casing used in the dynamo tank multi-block, a structure capable of storing a great amount of fluid. So if I just build a 3x3x3 of this, does that form into a tank? I think that it might. Whoops, that's not right. Let me get rid of that, and let me check that again. It doesn't. I don't know if you need some kind of... Oh, you need a valve, of course. The dynamic tank valve, easy enough. And that's going to allow us to both, I believe, put water in and take water out of this. It also might need to be hollow. I actually don't know. Let me put this back down, and then let's see again. This is still not a multi-block. There's a possibility it might need to be hollow. It does. Cool. Okay, so now you'll see this forms into a multi-block. You can build this much bigger. It just needs to be some kind of cuboidal shape. And this can currently hold 432 million millibuckets of water. The idea here, as the book suggested, is that we can take the Evertide amulet. This is an item from Project E, made with buckets of water and dark matter. And if you put this into a tank, for example, up here, it just fills that tank up with water. We could do the exact same thing with this guy, and you'll see that it just keeps this full of water. And if we build this really, really big we can have it store a lot of water, and then from there, we can extract all that water, and using this infinity pipe upgrade, we can pull out a lot of water very quickly. If we set this to extract, you'll see by default, it transfers 50 millibuckets every tick. If we put in the infinity pipe upgrade, it now transfers 2.147 billion millibuckets every tick, which is basically just a ridiculous amount of water that we probably shouldn't need. It does recommend building a very big tank. The big tank might just be because of the fact that this only holds 9 million, so moving 2 billion per tick means that we would need a much, much bigger tank. And so we could probably do with building a much bigger one of these, which is where we kind of run into a space problem. I think, though, given that we also need to build the reactor, I think it's probably about time that we tear down the Gaia fighting ring, because I don't think that we're going to need to fight the Gaia again in this playthrough. And I think we can use this area here both for building a giant tank to provide water to our fission reactor, and also to build the fission reactor itself to allow us to start to get some polonium. So let me take a look here. The fission reactor requires fission reactor casing. It also requires fission reactor ports, along with, I don't believe we need the adapter, but we do need a fission fuel assembly. Also, let me go back to mechanism. We definitely do need one more thing, and that one more thing, I believe, is a control rod. This guy right here, the control rod assembly. It kind of works in a similar way to the extreme reactor that we built down here, in that you do need to have a control rod assembly at the top of your fission fuel assembly. So back in here, the casing itself is just steel and a steel casing, easy enough. The reactor port, also easy enough, control circuit and some of the casing, boom. And then the fuel assembly, also straightforward. We need lead, steel, and a tank, which we've made before. And then finally, we also need the control rod assembly, which is pretty straightforward. And in much the same way as we did with the previous reactor, you can also make reactor glass. This, again, kind of works in the exact same way as fission casing, but it just is transparent, which is good. To make it here, we do need some enriched iron, which is coal and iron. That is completely fine. We seemingly don't have any coal, but again, I think that's just a visual anomaly. Over here, we definitely do have coal available, and of course, we definitely have iron available as well. Let's do one of these, and if we do a quick /home, we can throw this in here. You can click dump, by the way, to empty this out. Throw in some coal, throw in some iron, quickly give that a tap if we can get to the bag fast enough. And once we have ourselves some enriched iron, we can EMC it like so, and we can hopefully make the reactor glass. Nice. And so now we should, I think, have everything it takes to put together a reactor. I'm going to start with a fairly small one, and then we'll build a bigger one after we've got the fundamentals kind of down. So let me get some reactor casing. What we'll do initially is we'll build kind of the same 5x5 that we built previously. So we'll go 5 across like so, and then using our wand, we can then go ahead and do 1, 2, and 1, 2. This is a very small little reactor, but it should work to show off how this works. So let's also get the fuel assembly and the control rod assembly. Nice. So we are going to do something like this. Again, the more of these you have in, the more fissile fuel you can burn. It does also mean the more cooling you have to be able to provide. Unlike the reactor downstairs, this one can explode. And so do bear that in mind. You do have to be very careful with this reactor. We're going to go 3, 4, 5 up like that. And I'm probably just going to go ahead and do something very similar to what we did downstairs. We're going to build out a hollow cube like this, and then that hollow cube is going to be filled in at the sides with reactor glass. I believe with this reactor, you have to put the control rod assembly inside the reactor like this, not in the roof. And then I believe that we can just fill the top in like this. We can fill the bottom in, it's already filled. And we can, of course, go ahead and throw down a bunch of our reactor glass all around the outside like this. And again, I'm pretty sure that if we use our wand here, we should be able to build all of this up simultaneously like that. Cool. You'll know you've done it right, as always, when you get the red particle effects. And now in here, we have a fission reactor. And in here, we've got 2 options. We've got the coolant tank and the fuel tank. The fuel tank, of course, takes the fissile fuel. The coolant tank takes water. And then on the output here, we can get heated coolant, which in our case is going to be steam as you heat up the water. And we also get a waste tank. The waste is actually what we're after here, because we're trying to make polonium, which thankfully does have an EMC value. To make the polonium, we need to get this polonium right here. So this is just water. This is just fluorite dust. Fluorite dust we can get from fluorite, which we can get from apatite. Easy enough. The polonium, though, we get from nuclear waste. And the conversion here is what makes it tricky, because it takes 10 millibuckets of nuclear waste to make 1 millibucket of polonium. And so if we're going to get 1,000 millibuckets of polonium, which is what we need to get 1 polonium pellet. We need to get 10,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste, and we get 1 millibucket of nuclear waste per millibucket of fissile fuel, which means we only need 10 buckets of fissile fuel, I think, to get 10 buckets of nuclear waste. So this might not be too bad. Let's have a look. So first things first, we do actually need some of these reactor ports. We need 1 to put the water in. We need 1 to take the steam out. We also need 1 to put the fissile fuel in and 1 to take the nuclear waste out. So I think in total, we're going to need 4. I'm going to just put 1 on each side here. So we'll do not you. We'll get rid of that and we'll put 1 down here. And then we'll put the final 1 down here. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if this wrench will work, but usually, yeah, it doesn't. We might need the configurator from Mechanism. But essentially here, we can configure these to take different inputs. Right now, if I right-click, shift-right-click, there we go. This is at the output waste, output coolant, input only, and that's all good. So I will set this one to output waste. I'll set this one here to output coolant, so that's going to output steam. Over here, these two are going to be both set to input. This one is going to take the fissile fuel. For then, we of course already have the fissile fuel fragments here, but we do need a chemical oxidizer, this guy here. And thankfully for that, we're just missing a personal chest, which is super easy to make. What are we missing? We are missing barrels of all things, as always, of course. I keep making these. I should really just teach them. There we go. Try that again. Boom. And boom. Let's also make sure, as per usual, we have a flux point so that we can provide power to the chemical oxidizer. And I feel like I might as well just put this down on the front, make sure the back is set to output, make sure auto eject is set to on. And then from there, as soon as we are ready to turn this thing on, we can go ahead and put some of our fragments into here, and it's going to immediately start putting them into the reactor, which is perfect. Over on this side, we're just going to go ahead and rebuild that large tank for the water. So we'll start with a 5x5 and we'll see how that goes. And of course, this needs to be hollow, so we'll do something like this, and we'll just make sure that the valve is right at the front here, so that we can use our fluid pipe to pump straight over into the reactor. All right, and now that we have a nice big tank with 43.7 million buckets of water in it, let's go ahead and set this to extract. And then did I put the pipe in here? I did. Let me do this. Boom. And so now this is full up of water. Let's go over here. So I think what we might be able to do for the steam, we actually don't need it. I think we can get a fluid trash can. I think steam counts as a fluid, so I'm pretty sure, albeit not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that we can just do something like this and like this. And I think we can just delete the steam that comes out of there. I will put a high tier pipe upgrade. It's quite possible we could probably do with getting another infinity pipe upgrade because the steam might come out about as fast as the water goes in, but that really depends on how high we set the burn rate. So in here, if we go ahead and put in, let's say, 1 of these pellets, that is going to go ahead and make 2 buckets of fissile fuel. If we then set the back of this to output and make sure the auto eject is set to on, that should begin to push into here. Again, it's a gas, make sure that's set to on. And there we go, that's filling up, cool. So in here, if we click activate, it's gonna start going. And right now, the burn rate is set to 0.1 millibuckets per tick, which means every tick, again, there are 20 ticks per second in Minecraft, it is just using 0.1 millibuckets of fissile fuel. And you'll see it's making nuclear waste. We need 10,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste, which we can then turn into the polonium, and the steam there is not being taken out fast enough. So let me scram for a second here. Let me also get another one of those stellarium plates, because I think we can very easily make another infinity pipe upgrade. It's just a case of throwing this guy in over here. Again, just the one, please. I don't want to waste all of the stellarium. It was pretty expensive to make. That gets us the plate, and of course the plate gets us the pipe upgrade over in the combiner. Let's do you with you. Perfect. So that should hopefully pull the steam out as fast as it's being taken in, and hopefully the steam is actually getting sent around. Let me see here. If I do this, does that actually take the steam out? It doesn't actually. That seems to be the problem. The problem is not that it's going slow enough, it's the problem that it's not going into this tank. Let me see if the ultimate trash can here works. I hope it does. There's an energy trash can, an item trash can, and a fluid trash can. I don't know if the ultimate trash can is going to delete the steam. It's also not, but again, that could actually just be a case of the fluid pipe not being able to pull gas. Let me try one last thing. If I do this, that does fill up with steam, and that does delete steam. Okay, if I press play, it's deleting it faster than it's coming in. Okay, so we didn't need the extra infinity pipe upgrade. I think that's completely fine. And so now this is running. What we can do is we can click this little stats button in the top left, and we can change the rate at which the reactor burns fissile fuel. In doing so, it's going to produce a lot more heat and need a lot more water to cool it. For example, if we go to 1, that's going to have a 10-fold increase. So now we're burning 1 millibucket of fissile fuel per tick as opposed to 0.1. But you'll see we're burning through it faster, and we're getting more nuclear waste here, which is good. The temperature is what we want to worry about. Right now, it seems like we're doing fine on water. If I put that back in there, I think that should stay full. It goes to the output when you put it in the first time, but if you put it back in the input, that should just keep working. Let's do a big jump here. Let's try 5. So we're now doing 50 times as much fissile fuel as we were before, and it kind of seems fine. We need more steam extraction here. That's fine. Right now we're using the basic pipe. If we were to go ahead and swap that out for a higher tier pipe, again, just like with the control circuits before, we can upgrade the basic to advanced. Let me make sure I've taught that first before we go to advanced, and then to elite, and then, of course, to ultimate. Ultimate being the highest and able to move a lot more than the previous tier. The previous one could move 750 millibuckets per tick. This one can do 256,000 millibuckets per tick, so it should be more than enough to really empty this out basically straight away. Let's check over here. Yes, we are losing water here. If I do that, though, we're fine. I don't know if there's a way for me to kind of force that to stay in there. If I put... let me scram this. I don't like leaving it running. If I put like another Evertide amulet. Oh, I see right here. We can go both fill, empty. We want to set this to just fill, right? And if we leave it on... Wait. Is fill right? Fill... Oh, we're at fuel. Okay. Empty. Empty is what we want to set it to. Okay, so if we set it to empty, it should stay in that top slot. Thank you, chat. Over here, we're actually out of fissile fuel, but we already have 2,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste, and we don't actually need that many millibuckets, right? As we saw earlier, the polonium pellet only requires 1,000 millibuckets of polonium, and then it has an EMC value, which is crazy. And then that means we only need 10,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste. We're already at 2,000, and so I think that if we go and grab our fissile fuel pellets, 2, 4, 6, 8, I think 4 more pellets might be enough, which is crazy if that's the case. And then from there, if we're going to make antimatter, antimatter does require polonium. Chat is right here. It takes a lot of it, I guess. So you need 1,000 millibuckets of polonium per 1 millibucket of antimatter, and so this is where I guess you really do need a lot of it. But for now, at least, I think this should be fine. Let me try changing this to maybe 10 millibuckets. Again, a double from where we were at previously. How is that going? That's holding up. This is holding up. The temperature's holding up. Let's try 20. We'll go double again. Did that work? Oh, no, the max burn rate is 10. Okay, so the max burn rate there, I believe, is set by the amount of fuel rods you have inside. So if we were to make the reactor bigger, we'd be able to burn at more than 10 per tick. But even at 10 per tick, we're getting pretty close to the 10,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste that we need. And so I guess let's see then if we can't make this polonium happen. For that, we just need to get ourselves the solar neutron activator. The downside about the solar neutron activator is that it does require the sun. Like, you have to give it access to the sun in order for it to work. So let me see. If I put it here, is that... I actually can't tell if that's, like, in line. I want it, I think, 1 block... Oh, no, that might be fine. I'm going to put it 1 block further forward. We'll put it down right there, like that. And then we need to pump the nuclear waste over into that. Again, I'm fairly certain that we can just use the pressurized tubing to make that happen. Quick check to make sure this is not burning down. It's not. We can hit scram because we're done. And so if we were to do something like this, we can start to extract that nuclear waste over into the solar neutron activator, and assuming that it has access to the sun, which it might not, this would start working. Let me do a quick check here. I'm just going to fly in the upwards direction. There's a possibility that we're kind of being blocked by one of these blocks here. If that is the case, it's kind of fine. We can just break whichever block it is that's blocking us in. I should have built it 1 block further over. Unfortunately, now I don't believe we can break it, because if we do, the antimatter is going to leak everywhere, and it's going to be very bad for all of us. I'll get rid of that. I don't know if the pipe actually blocks the line of sight. Let me get a bucket here real quick. So we actually, you know what? Let me just temporarily do this. That's fine. I don't know if these two tubes block the sun. They don't. Cool. The water might be blocking the sun currently, but hopefully that water won't last too long. But it looks like the pipe that's up there shouldn't be blocking the sun, and so this should work and should fairly quickly. Thankfully, the water here not going to break any of our stuff, but this should fairly quickly get us 1,000 millibuckets of polonium. From there, to actually get the polonium pellet, we need, you guessed it, another pressurized reaction chamber. Let's grab one of those out of the system. We'll throw that down kind of right on the front, I think, here of the solar neutron activator. Fantastic. And then, as luck would have it, we just need a bucket of water, I think, from there. Again, a tank is going to be necessary because for whatever reason, you cannot bucket directly into this thing. That is fine. Let's say this and this and this. And of course, we could put another Evertide amulet in there as well, actually, if we wanted to keep it fully full. But this looks like it's pretty much good to go. The only thing that we're missing is fluorite dust. As we saw before, that's just apatite. Apatite we have available to us. We just need to drop it into one of our mana pools, specifically this guy right here. Let's make sure that we teach that to our transmutation tablet. Boom. And then let's also go ahead and drop that into the crusher to get the fluoride dust. Nice. Again, we will teach that to our tablet. Fantastic. And now back down at the bottom, we should be able to just drop that in here, and that should get us what we need just as soon, of course, as we give this guy some power. And so let's do a quick one. I guess of those, I kind of want it on top, like here. I, again, got pulled down too fast by my boots, but let's do this, and that should be everything for our polonium pellet. Nice. And so, chat, next time, what we'll do is we will take these polonium pellets, which let's make sure we teach that, of course, so it's available. Next time we'll come back, we'll look at making the supercritical phase shifter. Does the SPF's casing have an EMC value? It doesn't. Interesting. That's because we need some of these plutonium pellets. That requires plutonium, which is also more nuclear waste. So we do have to turn the reactor back on. I think we are probably going to want to make a bigger one, just like a much bigger version of this and a much bigger version of the dynamic tank. I don't think either of those are going to be very difficult for us to do, though. To be fair, the setup is basically the exact same. We just need to make sure that we have enough water to cool down a bigger fission reactor. And then there's a different process over here. We don't use the solar neutron activator. We use the machine that makes us the plutonium, which is the isotopic centrifuge. That's fine. And then, of course, once we have the supercritical phase shifter up and running, it's at that point that we then need to get a lot more of the polonium, which again is through that solar neutron activator, to make antimatter. And unfortunately here it takes 1,000 millibuckets of antimatter to make one pellet, and you only get 1 millibucket of antimatter per bucket of polonium. So you do need a ton of polonium, which means a ton of nuclear waste. Thankfully, that nuclear waste should be fairly straightforward for us to get. One final thing is these waste barrels. These, again, super easy, but by default, the waste cannot be deleted. So the nuclear waste in here, at the moment we need it, but obviously if you just wanted to run this for power, because it can produce power if you set up a turbine, because you can use the steam that is generated to power a turbine, which is something we'll probably look at doing because we're going to need that power for the antimatter. The antimatter here requires just a staggering amount of power. You'll see input 400 million redstone volts per tick, way more than we're currently producing. But in terms of the nuclear waste, if you wanted to get rid of it, you can't delete it. What you can do is you can put it into a radioactive waste barrel. The same is true of the spent nuclear waste over here. This spent nuclear waste isn't deletable and is still radioactive. If something has a radioactivity, it means that if it is let loose, for example, if I just broke this machine now, we would have radiation throughout the base. We would just die almost immediately. It would not be good. Radiation is a pain. You don't want it. What we can do is we can put it into these radioactive waste barrels, and you'll see that there is a decay rate here of 1 millibucket per 26, so 1 millibucket per second, which means that if I were to pump this 1,000 millibuckets into one radioactive waste barrel, over the course of 1,000 seconds, it would slowly but surely delete all of the excess waste. If I were to put down multiple of these radioactive waste barrels like this, we should then be able to throw down multiple of the pressurized tubes. We'll use the ultimate ones here, and let's do something like this. And then what we should see is that if we set the front of this to be the output for gas, that's going to go ahead and take all of that spent nuclear waste, and it's going to put it in these barrels. And in here, oops, we can see that there's 135, 134, 133. It has evenly distributed it, and right now we are basically deleting 7 millibuckets per second of spent nuclear waste. We're probably going to have to massively scale up this operation, because once we're producing just a ton of nuclear waste, and once we're turning that into a ton of polonium, we're going to end up with a ton of spent nuclear waste, and we want to be able to get rid of it fast enough, because if we don't, and if the whole thing backs up, then again, we're going to get radiation, which is not what we want. And so at some point in the coming future, we're probably going to want to throw down just a ton of these radioactive waste barrels somewhere so that we can very efficiently and easily get rid of large amounts of spent nuclear waste. But of course, that's a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sky Revolutions there.